My name is Patrick Luganda. I am the chairman of the Network of Climate Journalists in the Greater Horn of Africa. And this symposium has been extremely informative. I've learnt a lot. I've had a lot of opportunity to meet a number of various stakeholders in the climate change adaptation and mitigation process from various countries in Africa, researchers, people who are working with civil society organizations, people who are working as funding partners in the climate change adaptation. And there's been a lot of knowledge sharing in that lots of projects which have been doing work on climate adaptation with African communities have been able to come up and say what they've been doing. Some of them have been part of academic research, but some of it has been work directly with communities. Like we had examples either from Tanzania, West Africa, Kenya, quite a lot. And this is a good forum to share out this information, because you can learn what is in one place and apply it in another. So without so much as reinventing the wheel, doing exactly what they may have done. As a communicator, I have seen that there's some substantial work that is being done about communicating on adaptation, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There is not enough work being done. And the fact is, the number of players who are in the climate change communication is not very, very big. Previously, we've been working with Adapt Africa, in that a number of their members, we've collaborated, either we attended conferences earlier, and they've also participated in helping us to bring out the climate change communication to journalists in a better way. For instance, last year we had the first Africa Climate Change Communication Conference in Kampala, and we had over 20 people who belong to Adapt Africa who attended. And a number of these participated as resource persons, giving their experiences on what they had done with adaptation and letting journalists have that expose, the knowledge that actually there is something substantial that's being done. If you're out there in a newsroom or working on a radio station, it may be difficult for you to identify who's doing what adaptation work. But the fact that we were able to interact with a number of them in Kampala for about 3 days, it enabled scientists to get a lot of new sources from where they can get information. So that was great. But also participating in this conference as an individual and also somebody who's chairing and building a network of journalists, the fact that I get to know so many other people who are working with adaptation enables members of the network to also directly get access to this. We have a website, which is www.NECJOGHA.org, and part of the proceedings, we are going to get them out onto the website, and our members can access it, they can make stories, they can also enrich their knowledge through that. So as part of the outcomes, I did make a presentation about the role of the media in climate change adaptation, and I do feel that it can stimulate debate within the climate science and climate-related activities for us to take something as we go to COP17, the Conference of Parties conference, which will take place in Durban, to take an African perspective, at least in the communication sector. Because we think that we will be able to hold another conference on communication, climate change communication in August. This will be the second one, and we hope Adapt Africa will participate so that we can go to Durban with one voice on what we want to be achieved or what we have achieved with communicating climate change messages and information. And I think it's a crucial intervention in that if it is done properly, it can reduce on expenses and costs of reducing impacts on climate change, particularly to vulnerable communities that cannot afford a newspaper, communities that will never meet their member of parliament, communities that do not have access to government policy makers, who cannot even have a voice. So communication is important. It gives voice to the voiceless, and also it enables interaction if there's a feedback mechanism on what people want to be done for them and what their challenges are, so that solutions are provided. Otherwise, researchers and scientists will work in a vacuum, talking to themselves and not knowing what is good, or what is better for the local people, the grassroots people, because they have no feedback mechanism. One of the important things to understand is that media communication, or communication in general, is a two-way process. You have an audience and you have somebody who's communicating. It's not just talking, just like you talk in a bar. Or even in a bar, you have a certain message you want to communicate. But you have to be more than careful, just like casual. It's not just like casual conversation. You want a particular message to be given out, and you want it to achieve certain impact. So for journalists, many of them are not well trained in communicating science. So many times they actually are not very confident on what they are communicating. So there's a need to build their capacity. There's a need for science to be patient and interact with the media over a long time. I'll give an example what has happened in the IGAD region, where I chair the journalists. For the last 10 years, since 2001, we've had a close relationship with the science community, to the extent that we actually participate in training them how to communicate, and they also share with us sufficient science information for us to understand climate better. It has gone a long way in helping us to communicate because we understand the issues. Likewise, the scientists have understood how the media works. They've also accepted that the media has certain challenges, it has certain shortcomings, and there's a way in which you can work in a compatible manner. So my main message is we need more capacity building for journalists, particularly because they are really the people who are the driving force. But at the same time, we need also to build capacity for scientists. But there's a special crop of journalists who never get to the conference rooms, and these are sub-editors and editors. They are also part of the media. They need to come. They need to be exposed. Now, many science programs do not have that in-depth communication component inbuilt. I was talking to one professor just at tea break, and it is obvious that many programs that come up do window dressing regarding communication. It should be a deeper thing. From the inception of a program or a project, communication should be, intertwined in the activities. It should not just be a mid-evaluation or an end-of-project report for the benefit of either a website or the benefit of a donor who says that I want to see what you have been doing. So scientists must see that they involve the media not just to report about the issue, but to report objectively on a day-to-day or from time to time about what they're doing. Otherwise, you end up having sensationalism as attractive. And also, when the audience listens or hears about something regularly, they start to pick interest. They start to like it. So they should accommodate these questions the journalists give across, and they should also have that rapport regularly. That we want to tell you, give you an update on what we are doing, so that the public can thirst for this information, and then they can use it relevantly. But more importantly, journalists must be able to convert the information they receive into something that is consumable, something that should benefit, something that should have community benefit, something that should create an action or a reaction in a positive light.